on our decision, but we had good reason for doing it. That's sort of the core of the inversion. The point I'm making in these cases, though, in this last section here, when we talk about the civil rights cases where this has come up, you usually see the court approach the question with a great deal of skepticism. Let me just give you a couple of examples. I won't go through them all, but the cases you probably are most familiar with are Fisher, the Michigan affirmative action case, where Michigan says, yes, we took race into account. This would normally be the end of the policy. But we had a very compelling reason for doing it, says Michigan. We wanted to encourage diversity, and diversity we think is only achieved through this particular mix of admissions where we take some account but not total account of race in our considerations. The court has looked at that and sort of voiced a good deal of skepticism. They said it was okay in Michigan, but now we see a case out of Texas where they've sent the case down to the trial court again to actually make some findings that suggest that they're not really all that happy with the diversity rationale. That may have something to do with the departure of Justice O'Connor, but suffice to say the court isn't necessarily wholesale embracing the justification that the court is presented with by the university, that diversity is their driving consideration. Another case, which actually is near and dear to this, I guess, neck of the woods, Ricci, a decision out of Connecticut in which the Supreme Court rejects the city, I believe it is, of New Haven.
That's right.
New Haven city's decision to change the way in which they deal with promotion of firefighters, in their view, because they thought that there were potential civil rights problems associated with the way in which their system was organized. The Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that, because we think actually race still is not justified as a policy consideration based on the way that you organize the policy. In particular, though, the court was really dismissive of the political leanings of the city government, which it said essentially was hijacked by local civil rights groups to pressure them not to apply the promotion exam that was being challenged, that they ultimately changed. And it really, if you haven't read it, Justice Alito's description of one of the civil rights leaders, minister in town, sounded as though this was a guy who, was like the kingpin of the crime syndicate. And you kind of wonder, there are a lot of things to be said about the sort of conception of politics, local politics, but it does raise hard questions about what a city may, under any circumstances, do in order to avoid liability under civil rights law. And the court seems to be saying to the city, no, we don't really care about that, nor should you. Race should not be a consideration, even when you think you might be creating problems for African Americans. I'm going to skip the last one just to point out here that I'm suggesting that in addition to these other areas where this sort of inversion is at play, it's true in voting rights as well. I assume, just for the moment, that you all have seen stuff about the Voting Rights Act before, but suffice to say, there are two different provisions, or at least there were. One is an affirmative piece that, again, allows a plaintiff to go to court and seek redress for what we would describe